Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. The first social media reactions are now out for Dune Part 2, so I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to read a couple of them off for you. But let me just tell you, these reactions are massive for cinema because we've been in a drought for like 2 months so far. March is going to get us reignited again with some great movies. Before I get started on the reactions, make sure to like this video. Helps out a lot. But the first reaction comes from Joseph. He says, Dune Part 2 is a cinematic masterpiece. This is a must-see on the biggest IMAX screen you can find. Parts of this movie made me feel like I was in the film. This isn't a movie, it's an experience. Denis Villeneuve is a master storyteller. Get ready for an epic cinematic journey. Just from that first reaction, I'm hyped. You know, these trailers have got me so hyped. Reading the book has got me even more hyped. Like, if you haven't read the book before going into part 2, I suggest, you know, at least skimming the back half a little bit, just to, you know, get used to some of these characters. But the new characters that we're going to see, the Emperor, Princess Erlon, Fade Rautha, and more the Baron, which is going to be interesting. Dorian Park says, absolutely loved Dune Part 2 from start to finish. I was blown away by every aspect, from the story, the acting, the visuals, and the soundtrack. Everything felt epic. Timothy and Zendaya's chemistry was unmatched, and the sprinkles of humor landed. This is something that I was wondering going into this movie was, you know, how much comedy Denis was going to put in this, because there are some funny jokes in the first one, and I do like that little bit of levity, because the first one is very dense. You know, it's a lot of world building, a lot of character building, a lot of just setting up. So I did like how there's a couple jokes in that one, especially with Duncan Idaho. Duncan Idaho is a very funny character. So I was interested to see if there are gonna, you know, be any jokes in this one, because this one's supposed to be serious, supposed to be, you know, revenge tale fight, and then there's gonna have a lot of love story between Timothy and Zendaya, Chani and Paul. So that's interesting to hear that there's gonna be more comedy in there. But yeah, another great reaction. This one's from Jeff. He says, Dune Part 2, Denis Villeneuve lands every spectacular brutalist tableau he threw in the air 3 years ago. Sci-fi myth making at its finest, and most tragic, the gravity of manufactured destiny, the untamable tendrils or belief. Love this. Oh my gosh, just hearing these reactions is gonna be great. We have two from Courtney Howard. She says, Dune Part 2 is jaw-dropping, breathtaking, and wildly exhilarating. It's an adrenaline rush to the head, heart, soaring in its spectacular driven action sequences as much as it sings in its refined evocative stillness. Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya turn in singular work. Austin Butler is absolutely transformative, captivating, and seductively evil. Yet another compelling performance of Dave Bautista. Rebecca Ferguson tears up the screen, rising to commanding power. Florence Pugh turns in career best work. This is such a great tweet from Courtney Howard. I love how she even said everything here. And her saying that Florence Pugh turns in career best work is kind of surprising, because I thought we weren't going to get a lot of Princess Erlon, and Florence Pugh's not going to be into that much, but she does contribute to a big turning point at the end of the story. So maybe we do get her in a little bit at the end, maybe just from a little bit of monologue. She gives a great performance in that. But just hearing, you know, the praise for every single actor coming across. Austin Butler is the one I'm most excited to see, because him turning into Fade Rautha is going to be kind of interesting. You know, Austin Butler being Elvis and just being, you know, that kind of character, to a, you know, a terrifying Harkonnen in being Fade Rautha, and just, you know, his duel with Paul Atreides is going to be really interesting to see. You know, a lot of praise about Timothy and Zendaya, their chemistry there, so I'm very excited to see this. Diego says Dune Part 2 is a monumental cinematic achievement, greater than Part 1 on the narrative, technical, and thematic level. Villeneuve delivers with a grander ambition, aided by an extraordinary, morally complex performances from Timothy Chalamet, the first must-see blockbuster of the year. This is exactly what I was saying to you guys. This is the first must-see movie of the year. Like, January had, what did it have? Beekeeper, Mean Girls, Night Swim. No one's gonna go out and spend a lot of money on that. I mean, I have a Regal Unlimited, so it doesn't really cost me much. And then February, this month, we've only had Argyle, Madam Web, Bob Marley. It's like, no one, those aren't must-see movies. And honestly, February is worse than January, which makes no sense, but those aren't must-see movies. March is coming in hot, and Dune Part 2 is the first must-see movie of the year, especially in IMAX. She's going to have that expanded ratio, better sound. Like, let me just tell you, if you didn't see my review for Dune Part 1, the re-release, the sound is insane. What, you know, and then the cinematography is insane. The use of colors is insane. Everyone's just saying this is a very big cinematic achievement. It's better than Part 1, people are saying, because, I mean, the Part 2 of the book, is better than part one of the book, in my opinion. I mean, I do love the world building in the first part of the book, but the action, the big character moments, the time jumps, the revenge story, the love story in the part of the book, it's insane, and it is the first must-see blockbuster movie of the year. Jermaine says Denis Villeneuve sticks the landing with Dune Part 2, a fascinating, terrifying character study, totally grand skill, grand sci-fi skill. Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya are incredible in it. Set pieces are jaw-dropping. The supporting cast elevates all the rest. It's great. This is also another thing that I like to hear. It's terrifying character study because of, how Paul Atreides in his, turn in the latter half of this movie. It's a kind of terrifying story to witness. I haven't read Dune Messiah. All I know is the end of the Dune book, and I do know where his character goes to there. So it's going to be interesting how that's handled, but it sounds like it's going to be handled very well. And just hearing that the set pieces are just jaw-dropping, because the set pieces in part one are amazing. They didn't use a lot of green screen. They used something like sand screens in there to make it look more realistic, and it did. And let me just say, this movie is gonna win a lot of Oscars, just like the first one. The first one won like 6. This one could do even more. I mean, Best Picture, is it too early to predict this for Best Picture next year? I mean, it's feeling like a Return of the King kind of movie. Let's get to more reactions. Jeff Nelson says Dune Part 2 is a visually monumental epic, another monumental word being used, that never fails to immerse in its world. The narrative and its characters still beg for greater depth and the expansive mythos, but the action certainly goes much harder than Part 1. Bring on Denis Villeneuve's Dune Messiah. Pretty sure he's going to get Dune Messiah after this one. And as I've been saying, Part 2 of the book, it's more action-packed, so if you felt a little bit bored in Part 1, just stick through it, and then you're going to get to Part 2, and that's going to be the action part of the story, because, you got to set up the action. You got to make it worth it, because if you just go into a movie and get action right away, it's not worth it. You got to set it up. You got to set up the revenge story to make it really worth it. Brandon Davis, one of my favorites, he says, some of the visuals in Dune Part 2 had me so astonished. I feel like I understand how everyone felt seeing Star Wars for the first time back in 1977. It's just unbelievable at times. That's what Greg Fraser does, make some amazing visuals. This man, Greg Fraser, really went from Dune Part 1 to the Batman to Dune Part 2, and maybe he's going to do the Batman Part 2. Like, man, it's just on a tear right now. David says Dune Part 2 is Denis Villeneuve's Empire Strikes Back and Lawrence of Arabia. I haven't heard that one yet, but that is huge praise. A sci-fi opera that is not just grand in scale, but it is a hypnotizing and emotionally devastating story. Austin Butler will be a talking point for many, but it's Timothy Chalamet who left my jaw on the floor. There's more to that, but I'm not going to be able to click on that. More praise about Austin Butler and Timothy. More praise about them. Griffin says Dune Part 2 is not only Denis' magnum opus, it's a definitive sci-fi epic of a generation. Tragic tale of blind and corruption. Spectacular, soulful, awe-inspiring masterclass of aesthetics and mood beautifully echoing Paul's turbulent journey. It left me speechless. Sorry if I'm getting some of this wrong. I do not have my glasses, and I'm not going to put them on because of the glare. And Carl says Dune Part 2 is a masterpiece, maybe one of the best space films ever, besides being the most visually impressive movie I've seen. Oh my god. An assault on all the senses. It's a riveting political thriller and character study. The cast is great, but Rebecca Ferguson and Austin Butler steal it. More praise about Rebecca Ferguson. Excited to see what she does here. Another tweet from Brandon Davis. He says Dune Part 2 is a masterpiece. Denis Villeneuve drops an awe-inspiring, action-packed achievement in a hardy, complex story. It's an astonishing, moving film which demands to be seen on the biggest and most immersive screen possible. I loved it, innovative and thrilling. And then we got Tessa. She says Dune Part 2 is so visually stunning. It is absolutely mind-blowing. The story is exciting. The cast crushes it. Zendaya and Timothy Chalamet have unmatched chemistry, but he proves he is one of the greatest actors as he commands scenes, even opposite Christopher Walken. This is the first kind of news we've heard about Christopher Walken, the first kind of tweet about him. It just shows that Timothy Chalamet is standing his own ground against one of the legends, being Christopher Walken as the Emperor. And more praise about Zendaya and Timothy's chemistry, because you see him on the sand dune. Their kind of romance is finally starting. Paul and Shawnee. Mike Ryan says, I was kind of mixed on the first Dune. Dune Part 2 is phenomenal. Up there with the greatest sci-fi movies I've ever seen. I want to write a sandworm. So there we finally have someone who is kind of mixed on the first movie, but he thinks Dune Part 2 is phenomenal. So if you're mixed on the first movie, then you probably are going to find a lot more to like about Dune Part 2. And let's just do the last two here. Film Posers says, Dune Part 2 is unlike anything we've seen before, yet familiar all the same. With the consistently impressive use of score and sound, it features transformative performances from Timothée Chalamet and Austin Butler, an adrenaline rush of cinematic proportions. Last one that we'll read is from Gregory. He says Dune Part 2 is damn impressive. Villeneuve crafts some truly visionary moments. Austin Butler gives a truly transformative performance, and not talking makeup either. Very moving ending. A wee bit long. Yes. Did I forget? I saw it in the next day. Yes. Still going to be massive. Okay. So that's like probably the most. That's probably the most negative tweet that we've read so far. He said it was a bit long, and he said he felt like he maybe forgot a little bit of it. That's probably the most negative tweet you have, but I think it's still on the positive side. So I think we've read. How many tweets did we read? Like 12 tweets, and all of them have been positive, some a little lukewarm, but people are just saying this is a cinematic event of a lifetime. The first must-see movie of the year. Dune Part 2 is going to be, it's going to be huge. I'm seeing it the 25th, so very soon for me, coming out 2 weeks from today when I'm reading these tweets, so very soon for you guys to go see this movie. I feel like everyone needs to give this a chance, because people said, if you don't like Dune Part 1, I think you're going to like Dune Part 2 even more, because the action's just leveled up, the visuals are leveled up, sound's leveled up. I cannot wait for this movie. Let me know down in the comments, are you excited for this movie? What did you think of the first reactions? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.